Hello everyone, Republic Jim here, just out doing another segment about the utility sled. And this is a improvised shelter idea that I came up with. Originally I had intended to do this on snowshoes and with the full harness pulling the sled, but as you can see, apparently springtime came early this year, and the end of January it warmed up considerably and we've been getting rain and the snow's mostly gone away. So because of that, I am just having to simulate conditions, and I just drug the sled out here with the pull rope and just have a real basic setup just so I can show what I had in mind. So the idea on this use of the sled is a situation where there are not trees around to set up a ridgeline. Obviously there's trees all over the place here, and if you've watched many of my campouts or anything, you know that I typically always put up a ridgeline and a tarp shelter, but just have to use some imagination for this one, and we're going to simulate being in a scenario where, like, say it's above the tree line up in the mountains, or in a big clear-cut area, or maybe in the Midwest in an area where there just aren't many trees, where it's just kind of open and the weather's bad, the wind is blowing, it's snowing. You need to get a shelter set up quickly, and something that will be resistant to the wind. And you know, with the trekking poles and some paracord and such, it's not too hard to set up a sort of a tarp shelter, you know, using the trekking poles for support for making a ridge. But that isn't necessarily the strongest when it comes to wind, and it can be kind of a pain in the neck to get set up. So in this scenario, be out with the sled and my Arctic bedding system, and just need to get a sturdy shelter set up quickly. Now, at this point, you might be saying it's going to be difficult to set up a shelter like that. Actually, it's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience. Let me just set up the camera and I'll give you a quick demonstration. All right, so for this particular simulation, I'm just going to pretend that the wind is blowing towards the camera from those trees over that direction, so we want shelter from that. And just going to get to it here right away. So I just put a stake through the snap clip in the back there just to secure that and keep it from moving around. The hardest part with this is just getting it somewhat equalized, the spacing on those poles. Quick stake in the back there to keep this in place. And even with a fairly strong wind blowing it out this direction makes it easy to unfold it. And at this point I can either stake out the sides further out and maximize the space under there, especially if I want to have room to put my pack off to the side, or I can just pinch it in tight around there for a lower profile to the wind. And then when it comes to the front here, I can either stretch it out and fasten it down to the ground there, or I could run a couple of lines off to the side and stake them out to create more of an open area. If I was going to have a heater or any, a small fire or any sort of heat source there, then I would want to have that front open a bit to let the heat radiate in there. If I was going to use just like a candle lantern inside for some heat, then I would go ahead and stake it down and just leave a corner loose to where I could pop it up and fall under here. But once the tarp is staked out in a couple of places, it helps really make this more rigid, and it's actually, even though it moves around, it's not in any danger of falling over. So at this point it's already fairly stable. Of course, like I said, if the wind's blowing from that direction, I would have to have other stakes in the back, either in close or out wide, but just to keep it from flapping around. But for now I'm not going to bother, because it should be pretty obvious what the general concept is. So I'm going to stop for a moment and grab the camera and take you inside. So here I'm inside without the tarp stretched out at all. I could easily pull some slack to one side and stake it out there to where I had room for my pack outside of the poles. But at the moment I'm just scrunched in here next to it, but I'm laying on my Arctic bedding system, so I am off of the snow, and I could easily open it up and crawl inside and have my sleeping bag and everything. I could also break out my whoopee and other stuff from my pack to get a little warmer if it was you know, if I was going to be spending much time in here and it was really cold, then I likely would stretch it out just a little bit to create some space there and set up a candle lantern, which would be able to draw some air from underneath the tarp there, but would warm up this area up above here. And of course, with the, you know, this bubble foam stuff, it would help radiate the heat down, you know, help insulate this thing a bit. And the black plastic, I think, does actually hold some warmth too. So really, it would not be hard to spend the night in a shelter like this. Obviously, I would spend a little more time putting stakes in and pulling lines out if necessary, whatever it was going to take to make this thing hold up through the night. But in general, just wanted to give a quick overview as to how easily it's set up, even under harsh conditions. Of course, you know, you have to just simulate those conditions when you don't have them, but I think it's enough to get the general idea, and I'm quite confident that even on a cold, windy, snowy night, I could set this up quickly in the dark by headlamp if I needed to, and, you know, spend the night without being too uncomfortable or anything. I'd be able to be warm enough in here. Might not sleep a whole lot, but it's a good way to survive a night when you might otherwise be stuck out digging a snow trench or something. I much prefer this option. So anyway, that's about all I have on this topic, and the whole different setups with the utility sled. I'll probably be revisiting that with some other modifications to it in the future, but for now, kind of wraps that up. Hope that's been interesting or informative. This has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.